Okay. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Office Hours, back at home base. I'm Emily, VP of Customer Success here at ProLine, and I'm happy that you're joining me today. Today, we are going to talk about fractional quantities in your price list. It's a feature that might sound simple, but can make a real difference on how accurately your quotes, invoices, and orders reflect the material that you're actually using. If your team works with materials that don't always come in perfect whole numbers, things like rolls, bundles, anything calculated based on coverage, this session is for you. By the end, you'll know exactly what fractional quantities are, when to use them, and how to enable them, and how they work across quotes, invoices, and orders. So, why does this exist? Because we all know that when you order, you can't order fraction. Uh, let's start with a problem this solves. By default, ProLine rounds quantities up to the nearest whole number. Most of the time, that works fine. But for certain materials, rounding up every single time can quietly cause problems. Here's an example. Your measurement tool calculates that a job needs 2.1 rolls of underlayment. Without fractional quantities, ProLine rounds that up and shows 3 rolls on the quote and order because that's how you would order the appropriate amount for that job. Now, maybe someone on your team has half a roll left over from a previous job sitting in their truck. If they see if they only see 3, they might not even think to check, so they just order 3. But if they can see the actual number is 2.1, then they have the information they need to start making a smarter call. And maybe they only need to order 2. And here's the thing. This happens across dozens of jobs with multiple materials. So when everything is always rounding up, even by small amounts, it can add up. You'll end up with extra half-opened rolls of material that are hard to account for and ordering more than you actually need. Fractional quantities simply gives your team the accurate number so they can make more informed decisions. What they do with that information is up to them, but at least they're working with the real data instead of a rounded estimate. So, what exactly are fractional quantities? By default, like I said, we use whole numbers, but for quantity line items in quotes, invoices, and orders. If a calculation results in a decimal, the system rounds up to the nearest whole number. Fractional quantities allows you to switch specific price list items to use decimal values instead. So things like 12.5, 22.3, 49.75. This is especially useful for roofing materials measured by coverage and any item where seeing the precise quantity matters for accuracy. And importantly, you control this item by item. You don't have to switch this on for everything. You enable fractional quantities only for the specific materials where decimal precision makes sense. So let's talk about how to enable fractional quantities, and I'll walk you through that now. Let me go ahead and share my screen with you. You should be able to see it now. I'm going to click on this hamburger menu at the top left of the screen, and then go to company settings, which is at the very bottom here. And then I'm going to choose price list. Doop, doop. Okay, got my price list. Next to the item, let's go with underlayment. We'll just use that one as our example. Since we've been chatting about underlayment this time, let's just use it. So next to the item, click on price default calculation, which is going to be here, and then rounding behavior. I can switch this to fractional because again, it's automatically going to be rounding up. Okay. A confirmation message appeared. We chose switch, and then you enable the switch button. The reason we have you type that in is just to make sure there's no mistakes here. No one's accidentally changing how you manage this. And now underlayment will display decimal quantities anytime it's added to a new quote or order. Okay, and then to disable it, I'm going to just we go back into company settings, price list, under rounding behavior. under this calculator guy here, we can just choose this again and switch it back. And then we have or I changed the wrong one. Now we're a whole number on this one. Okay, so super simple how to turn that on and turn it off. And then let's look at how it actually shows up when you're building a quote. For today's demo, I'll be using a project called Jennifer Aniston. Here we are. And let's see, we're going to head over to the measurements tab. And I have a test for fractional quantities measurement here already set up for us with 21 squares for the total roof area. Okay. This quote already includes underlayment as a line item on the option page, and we can jump straight into seeing fractional quantities in action from there. Because we enabled fractional quantities for this item earlier, you'll see it calculated as 2.1 rolls. Let's go back into our quote. What am I doing? I want to edit it. Here we go. Underlayment 2.1 rolls. That's ProLine taking the 21 squares and dividing it by 10, which is the default calculation for underlayment. Please keep in mind the total price you'll see on the quote is $242.30 since it includes a 35% margin. So that number is not a direct just multiplication here. Your team sees the real number, and if anyone shows up to have leftover material from a previous job, they can factor that in before placing an order. At minimum, everyone is working from accurate data. Now, here's where it gets a little more nuanced, and this is when we're talking about orders. And it's important if your team places orders directly with suppliers through ProLine. Most suppliers can't fulfill fractional orders. You can't call your supplier and say, send me 2.1 rolls. They'll need a whole number. So ProLine gives you a way to handle this automatically through the automatically round up quantities setting in your order templates. So I'm going to go back over to my company settings, and I'm going to choose order templates. And let's see, I'll use material order. We're going to edit this. And then order details. And this is a template. Once this is set, you don't have to go back in here and do this every single time. This is, a template that we're using from now on if I set this up and choose to keep it this way. And then I'm going to scroll to order line items and automatically round up quantities. So we already have this set up for this order, material orders. So it's automatically going to round up to 3 on the order. So the quote is quoting 2.1, and then the order is showing me that it's going to round up. In this case, this is how I have this set up. So I've already had this checked. All line items and orders using this template are rounded up to whole numbers, even if the price list item has fractional quantities enabled. And this ensures your supplier always receives clean whole number quantities. When this is disabled, line items will use fractional quantities if the price list item has them enabled. So if the item has fractional quantities enabled, then this is going to go through on your order as a fraction. If this checkbox is not checked, is what that's saying. So let's go back over to Jennifer Aniston, and I'm going to open this order up for you. Here's our draft order, roundup example. What do I have here? Oh, what am I doing? I need to just view this order. Okay. Underlayment 3 roll. So you see here, it's automatically rounding up quantities, and because that is what's enabled on this template. They give it this way. Fractional quantities on the price list gives you the precise number in your quote. The order template rounding setting makes sure the decision or the precision doesn't cause any issues when it's time to order from your supplier. Another scenario worth covering is, what if you need to add a brand new priceless item directly from within an order? So let me show you exactly what that looks like using the same order we've been working on. Again, we're here. I'm going to stay on this example, and then let's edit this, and we're going to scroll down to add line item. And then I can type in my item here. Create new. Let's say it's $75. Okay, yes. This is material. And then I can choose here to use fractional quantities or not. Nope, I forgot to put in the unit of measure. Let's go with bundle, add. Okay, so this item is saved as fractional for future use, but in this specific order is rounded up to a whole number because the order template setting overrides it. Future quotes or orders without that rounding setting will use the fractional value. It's a helpful safeguard so you're never accidentally sending a supplier a decimal quantity, unless you mean to. Um, Taking a step back, why you should or shouldn't use fractional quantities versus whole numbers. Use fractional quantities when the material is measured or sold in units that naturally produce decimals. Precision matters for how you present quantities to customer, and rounding up every time is creating noticeable discrepancies in your quotes. Stick with whole numbers when the item is only sold in whole units and your supplier requires whole numbers. The rounding setting isn't practical for your workflow. The key is to enable fractional quantities only for items that genuinely need it, not as a blanket setting across your entire price list. Before we wrap up, here are a few best practices to keep in mind. Use the order template rounding setting for templates used to send orders to external suppliers. It keeps your internal calculations precise without causing issues on the supplier side. Test on a sample quote first before rolling out fractional quantities across your full price list. Just make sure calculations look the way that you expect. And then remember that existing line items are not affected. When you change a price list setting, only the new line items added after that change will use the updated configuration. Communicate this with your team. Make sure they know if they're used to seeing whole numbers that a decimal quantity might catch them off guard. So quick heads up goes a long way. And then just to recap, this lets you display decimal values for specific price list items in quotes, invoices, and orders. Instead of always running up, your team sees the exact calculated amount, giving them accurate information to work from when building quotes and making orders. Okay, well, that's fine. Let us know if you have questions. Reach out to the support team anytime. Thank you so much for joining today. See you next time.